Thank you, Esther. Just to take our audience back a little bit, that the high-level panel on illicit financial flows from Africa was established in February 2012 by the Conference of Ministers of Finance. At that time, on the African Union side, it was called CAMEF, and on the UNICA side, we organized that jointly, hand in hand. It was called a Conference of Ministers. Now, this high-level panel on illicit financial flows from Africa was chaired by His Excellency, former President of South Africa, President Thabo Mbeki. And the mandate of that high-level panel was to explore and gain comprehensive understanding of the nature and magnitude of the illicit financial flows from Africa, to assess their impact and the development, their impact on the development of the continent. The report of the high-level panel was presented and adopted by the summit in January of 2015, and a declaration was issued, a decision was taken, and it called for the chair of the high-level committee to continue his work on the illicit financial flows by way of advocacy and development of modalities for combating or curbing illicit financial flows. You may recall that in July last year, during the third Conference of Financing for Development, FFD, held in Addis Ababa, with its outcome document of quadruple A, Addis Ababa Action Agenda, it acknowledged the pioneering and leading role that Africa was playing in this area of illicit financial flows. And it urged other global regions to follow that example. I would particularly refer you to paragraph 24 of that document. So the high-level panel, the African Union Commission and UNICA, United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, we are just the secretariat of the high panel. We give a supportive role. We play a supportive role. So there were two regional stakeholder workshops, one in Nairobi, that was the first one in September 2015, for those in the southern region and eastern region. And then the second one was in Accra, Ghana, for Western, Central, and North regions. It was in November 2015. And the purpose of those workshops, still chaired by the president, former President Mbeki himself, was to enable the high-level panel to continue mounting advocacy campaign and to initiate practical measures for implementing the recommendations of the high-level panel, which had been adopted. It was to identify capacity needs at national, regional, and continental levels for combating these illicit flows, to deepen sensitization of national and regional actors and on the nature, magnitude, and impact of illicit financial flows from Africa, and raising awareness about the legislative action that is required to get rid of or to drastically cut these illicit financial flows, also at national, regional, as well as in continental levels, and really to give an opportunity for sharing for the stakeholders that were attempting to share information on potential tools and the implementation of the recommendations of the report of the high-level panel, and to build consensus on actions that are required at a global level. So these were very useful meetings, and the participants came from public, private sector, as well as civil society. So these two workshops address strengthening institutional, regulatory, and human capacities, increasing advocacy for commitment, collaboration, and reform, and strengthening technical capacities for speedy recovery of illicit and stolen assets, and dealing with abusive transfer pricing and trade mispricing, and following up on the global processes. Dr. Amdok will go into who attended and how they were selected, but they were all in the areas that normally the illicit financial, for the avenues that illicit flows would follow. Then President Mbeki and his delegation and high-level panel went to North America and later in Europe. Dr. Hamdok will talk. I'll leave that to Dr. Hamdok to brief you on what happened in the United States and in Europe on the advocacy mission. Let me just say, then another one was in Accra, and Accra was so important that not only was there that stakeholder sharing of information and so on, but also a consortium of organizations that have expertise in various areas of illicit financial flows from Africa, agreed to form that consortium so that they could develop modalities for identifying, holding, and even retrieving lost assets. How can that be done? Modalities now. And I'm happy to say that inaugural meeting was held in Sandton, South Africa, June 13th and 14th. And I'll request Dr. Amdok to tell you a little bit more about that. Let me just say, President Mbeki is so active, our leader, in this effort. He is really continuing to carry out the mandate that he was given by the summit. Even when the Panama Papers came out, he issued a statement which we have tried to distribute. So Panama Papers only confirmed the nature and enormity of this phenomenon. I want to go towards my conclusion by saying G7, when they met, the feeling that I got myself when I listened to their communique and so on was that it was half-hearted, lukewarm, and they only address a small aspect that involves these illicit flows. And, but these illicit flows, like corruption, is a global challenge that requires global interventions and measures to deal with it effectively. It's a global problem, just like corruption. Sometimes when you say Africa is corrupt continent, we may be, but we are not the only one. Even Europe is, even America is. You have heard of big firms being taken to court because they had corrupt practices. Others are not caught, but corruption is there. It shows that there is corruption there. In Europe, I remember reading one report where they lost about, about 241. I don't remember if it was billion or million. Either way, it's a big number that was lost in euros to corruption. It was a report, a public report that you can still retrieve from the archives and read. So we are trying to say it's a global problem that requires global intervention. That's the main point. So we felt it was lukewarm. So we are trying to urge G20, which will be meeting in China this year, around September or so, to kindly address this issue. So we are trying to talk to friends, our friends, the friends of Africa in there, to try to raise this issue, and we hope it can be more comprehensively addressed, better than G7. Now, the last point really, then I give over to Dr. Hamdok, is that stopping IFF is very important for realization of Agenda 2063, because if we kept IFF, you know, the initial estimates in the report was that about 50 billion was being lost. Since then, it has been realized that no, the figure is much higher, actually, with verifiable figures. It's now 80 billion, not less than 80 billion, and that may still be just a tip of the iceberg. So you can see that, and not only that, that the curve is upward, that this is continuing, it's growing. So really quick and decisive action is required. So I would like Dr. Hamdok to emphasize those points that I requested on really what the two workshops dealt with, what the consortium will be doing, and the trips of President Mbeki to North America and Europe.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Let's now listen to His Excellency Dr. Abdallah Hamdok, Deputy Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. What do you have to say about this issue of illicit financial flows out of Africa? The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, moderator. And I'm delighted to be here today to speak about this important issue of illicit financial flows from our continent. Dr. Maruping gave an excellent outline of the entire process, but allow me to fill some of the gaps and maybe share some of my thoughts and thinking on this important issue. As he rightly put it, the high-level panel on illicit finance from Africa, led by none other than the former president of South Africa, President Thabo Mbeki, has done an excellent job by putting this issue on the map and by articulating how the poor part of the world is subsidizing the rich part. The figure of the 50 billion that the continent has continued to lose for God knows how many years is really a very conservative estimate of the exact figure that we lost. Recent figures from Global Financial Integrity, as he put it, this year, the figures came out, put it at 80 billion US dollars annually we lose. This is more than twice the official assistance that Africa receives annually. Against the misconception and perception that it is the corrupt African dictators that siphon money, sending it to safe havens somewhere in the world. Actually, if you look at the component, the disaggregation of the component of illicit financial flows, from our research and from others, it is come into broadly three categories. The major culprit is the commercial activities linked to the multinational work, which represent about 60–65%. Issues related to criminal activities, counterfeiting and drug smuggling and all that is about 30–35%. Corruption represents about 5%. And don't get me wrong here, I'm talking about the magnitude, the number, the figures. Of course, corruption cut across all the three. When the multinationals siphoning money and evading tax or avoiding tax, they must be aided by corrupt element, whether in the private or the public sector. So it cut across those. But the figure in the magnitude, it is in that order. You can agree with me, as the Commissioner said, there is a very serious impact on this illicit finance on the development. That is why in Africa we consider illicit finance as a development issue. You can imagine how much we could do with the 50–80 billion that we are losing every year in terms of addressing development challenges and issues in the continent, the funding of the infrastructure, building our schools, clinics, roads, and all that. So I think for us this is a serious development issue. The panel devised a very unique methodology by, first of all, setting for itself a target of understanding illicit finance within the context of Africa. That is why they embarked on a case study that looked at illicit finance in various contexts in the continent, including post-conflict context, resource-based context, and all that. And they did 6 case studies in the continent. That is looking at Liberia as post-conflict, Nigeria, DRC, and Mozambique as resource-based areas, Kenya, and Algeria. They, as the Commissioner said, they embarked on a very serious consultative process that took them within and abroad, outside Africa. The summit of January 2015 approved the report of President Beki of the high level, and they asked him to report annually to the summit on what have they done to address this issue, including Stop the Campaign, Bleeding Africa, and all that. But also, they embarked on a global sensitization and consultative process. And as the Commissioner said, this is an African problem that calls for a global solution. We cannot resolve it on our own. We have to work with our partners because this problem has a supply and demand side of it. And the money that we lose, it ends up in and used by best brains in the world. It disappears in the safe havens. So there is a source and a destination. And we can only address it by working together with our partners in this. So the sensitization process that took the panel outside the continent, first they visited the United States, where they met with the United States government institutions and all that in a very cooperative process. But also they met with the Bretton Woods institutions, IMF and the World Bank, the boards and the leadership of the two institutions, had very serious consultation and discussion with them. They also met at New York with the United Nations Secretary General and addressed the ECOSOC chamber, met with the African group there, and met with civil society and other interest group in the States. In Europe, the panel went to first started in Paris with the OECD, and you know so well OECD takes lead in terms of addressing issues of illicit finance conceptually and also looking at initiatives and instruments in addressing it, BEPS and others. They also went to Europe, met with the Commission, and mainly with the European Parliament, addressing issues of illicit finance in its various forms and all that. By and large, the reception of the panel report and the panel itself was extremely positive, and I think it has been a very useful interaction that created an environment and a commitment that working together with our partners will be able to stem this problem. Moderator, I'll stop here and then listen to the question.
Thank you very much, Excellency Dr. Abdok, and Excellency Commissioner for Economic Affairs, Dr. Maruping, for highlighting this very critical issue of the illicit flow out of Africa, financial illicit flow out of Africa, or illicit financial flow out of Africa. I know that it's very, very important subject. We just want to know if there are people who want to ask questions. You present yourself, ask your questions, and they will give the opportunity to our panelists to address the issues. I can see already 2 hands. Can I have them giving the mic? Okay, 5. So many.
Thank you very much, Groom Jala, CCTV. First question for Mr. Abdullah. I just want to understand, according to the Panama reports, as you remember, the continent was mentioned several times. Several personalities have also been mentioned. What I want to hear from you is which parts of the continent are you seriously looking at, or how seriously Africa is being affected? You've mentioned several points earlier, but we just want to understand still the magnitude of this illicit financial flows from the continent. Your Excellency, Commissioner, this summit, 27th African Union Heads of State Summit, should come up with something, as in solution perhaps, because the continent is also looking forward to financing its own projects like the AUC or Agenda 2063 itself, and we are planning to get it from within. One of the sources, this money that we're losing. How is Africa planning to turn the game around and use these illicit flows and for funding the projects? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Girom. Let's just have all the questions for the first round, because there are two of them. They will address them one by one, and then we'll give opportunity for a second round. Please.
Thank you very much.
Present yourself.
My name is Mwai Collins. I write for the New Times Daily. It's a local English daily. To His Excellency the Commissioner, I would like to know what are some of the ways that you would propose to intervene in curbing illicit financial flows, and at the same time, there is a risk that as we try to curb illicit financial flows, that we could reduce our attractiveness to international investors, because by asking them, by trying to tighten the environment, there is a large chance that we could make the African investment environment not as attractive as it currently is. So how can we curb them at the same time without being less attractive? I would also like to hear thoughts from the UNECA Deputy Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's get the next question behind. The lady. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Kaitasi from Nation Media Group. Thanks to my two colleagues, because they've asked a lot of what was in my mind. But the Mbeki report made some recommendations which were adopted. My question is, so far, what is the progress? Have we seen any money recovered? What is the progress we have made since we adopted the recommendations? And then, since the Panama Papers came out, we saw highly placed personalities implicated, and nothing much was done. So let us be realistic. Can we really turn this thing around? Because the leaders are on top of illicit financial flows. Let's be realistic. Do we have hope of curbing this issue? Thank you.
Thank you for that pertinent question. Let's have the last question, and we will take in the second round follow-up questions.
Thank you, Excellencies. My name is Pasco. I work with Rwanda Television and Radio Rwanda, RBA. My question is, when you look at this trend, well, it's costful, but we want, in terms of statistics, the cost in terms of the economy of the globe, of Africa as a continent. I mean, how much does it cost, and what does Africans lose in this kind of business, which is losing a lot of money each year? And again, which is the major destination when it comes to illicit money flow from Africa? Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for the questions. The questions were directed to both the representative of the AUC and the UNECA. Let me start with the AUC.
Thank you. Dr. Abnok, of course, will answer from his angle if it's different, but I think the question was which parts of Africa are we concentrating on and so on. No, we are dealing with the whole of Africa, the whole continent. We are not apportioning. It's the African Union, and we tackle through the high-level panel and the leadership of President Mbeki all countries, because it is there, but in various forms or intensity, depending. The magnitude was mentioned, maybe, I don't want to say maybe some entered after we have made the present. Actually, we mentioned, and Dr. Hamdok repeated that, whereas at the beginning, in this report, it was estimated at 50 billion, but further work has revealed that with verifiable figures, it's at least 80 billion, but it's still not all, because it could still be a tip of the iceberg. I think it was what financing of the projects and programs, how then are we going to finance them and so on. But, well, that's why we are doing what we are doing through the high-level panel. By we, I'm talking about us as the African Union, assigning President Mbeki to lead that, to deal with it, because if we kept IFF, as we mentioned, then the tax basis will be deepened. It will be a deeper pocket out of which to raise revenue that is necessary to finance programs. Ways of combating illicit financial flows, that's what the consortium will be coming up with their expertise on various avenues that normally IFF, this illicit financial flows, normally takes. They are the ones who will devise ways or maybe suggest model legislations and templates on how to deal with illicit financial flows. From Media Center or something like that, lady number 3, then you said, is there any money that has been recovered? Yeah, part of it is being recovered. I know in the case of Nigeria, it normally involves a lot of legal work, prolonged legal work, to retrieve some of this stolen or illicitly flowed money that flowed out of the continent. What are we doing? Are we doing anything? Again, in the introduction, we had mentioned, we hope you will get the handout that we gave, and the statement of President Mbeki in the light of the Panama Papers. We have that consortium that is trying to develop modalities to precisely do something concrete. So something is being done, and that's the purpose of this conference, to brief you that there is ongoing work. Don't think that it's lost. There is ongoing, intensive work that is going to try to come up with answers. But we know, given the nature of these illicit flows, it's very complex. I always say it's like a hydra, hydra with many heads. If you chop one head, by the time you chop the 7th head, the first head has grown up again. And the new heads are coming out. It mutates. It's dynamic. It's moving all the time. When you close some doors, they find another avenue. Is there hope? Yes, there is, particularly with the international cooperation. Definitely. We wouldn't be wasting time, President Mbeki, going with Dr. Hamdok to North America or to Europe, and the work of the consortium and so on, if we had no hope that something could be done. Scale of losses were mentioned, and I've already mentioned the scale, at least 80 billion per year. Still tip of an iceberg. What are the major destination countries? But it depends on the kind of leak. Where it's our own people taking money out. They take them to tax havens, where they could have private accounts and so on. But where, illicit doesn't mean illegal. There is some legal illicit flows, either caused by very poor agreements, particularly of the extractive industry, the major culprit, or other means. So it goes to their home countries where the companies are registered. Those are the destination countries where these transnational companies come from. Now, will taking action on illicit financial flows to curb and hold it make us less attractive? To be frank with you, we are not interested in the companies that are attracted to us because they can easily, engage in illicit financial flows. Thank you very much. But we know that they still go to countries where those countries are very strict. There are still some companies that are investing in the United States, and recently President Obama stopped one of them who wanted to move the headquarters from the United States to Ireland, where the taxes are lower. That, you know, that is some form of illicit flows, but they were stopped by presidential order. Do you think they will stop investing in the United States? No, companies will still operate there and so on. So we would rather work with clean companies than those who are banking on illicit financial flows. Those we don't want. Thank you very much. We have a lot of poor people on this continent, and we cannot afford to be losing so much resources because of illicit financial flows. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Maruping. Let me invite His Excellency Dr. Abdallah to address the issues that were addressed to you on this critical issue of illicit financial flow out of Africa.
Thank you very much. Moderator, Dr. Maruping addressed most of the issues, but let me fill some of the gaps and maybe address some of the issues that were left. Let me start by saying that I think Panama Papers vindicated the work of the panel of illicit finance. This is the first time, probably for a long period, that we in Africa, we have been at the receiving end of everything. Borrowing thinking, borrowing money, borrowing all that. But it's for the first time that we put in the global agenda of the world an issue of illicit finance. Africa is not the only region of the world that suffers from illicit finance. But we put this on the map. It's not a phenomenon that happened just today or yesterday. It's always been with us. But I think the work of the panel has vindicated this. On the issue of financing Africa, I think this summit will have a retreat on the financing. But you can imagine how much we can go a long way in getting these resources, in addressing not only funding our development, but also funding our institutions. So there is a link there. Let me take the issue of the attractiveness of, and I think there is this argument from the News Daily about the perception that if we push this issue hard, we are going to sway away, we are going to drive away investors. Let us make this very clear. We would like critical, serious, clean, transparent, and honest investors to come and help us develop this continent. Our arms are open for them. We would like, at the same time, not to accept and not to deal with crooks and corrupt investors who come to our continent with the basic intention of siphoning resources. Through the work of the panel, we had some feedback and maybe some information. One of the presidents in this continent shared with us the fact that there are companies working at his country for 15, 20 years, and yet every year, year in, year out, declare losses. They don't make any profit. They don't go out of business, and they don't pack and leave. What does this tell you? This type of crooked business, we don't want them in the continent. But any clean business, they are welcome to help us work together, build this continent. They are needed, and they are welcome. My sister, the issue of Mbeki report is just last year, last January, which when it was approved by the head of state. This is a very serious issue. It takes effort from the continent, from our partners, to stem it out. But I'm optimist. I think the fact that we are putting it on the agenda of the world, the fact that our partners also, not because they see it as an African problem, but also it's a problem in the West. You must have seen and followed how much resources were retained for the taxpayers in the US or Europe and all that. So it's a problem that is faced the whole world, and working together we will be able to address it. I think the Commission addressed the issue of the destination and all that. And we also talked about the issue of how much it is. Our report earlier put it at 50 billion. And as I told you earlier, the global financial integrity latest figures came out in May. It puts this at about 80 billion annually. But believe me, this is a very conservative estimate. But let us think about it in this way. Let us not preoccupy ourselves with the exactitude, the exact figure. Nobody will be able to come up with the exact figure because this money actually benefits from the secrecy jurisdiction, is hidden. Some of it we might not even be able to identify and measure. But the fact that it is there and it is increasing, however the figure is, it's an important issue. We would like to address it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other? They didn't answer your question. A follow-up question. Can we have the microphone, please?
Thank you very much. As a follow-up question, yes, though the heads of state are sitting to seek a way forward, as economists, what options are on the table to address illicit financial flows? What are some of the options that are on the table? As much as, yes, the heads of state will come up with a way forward. Thank you.
Do we have any other question? If not, this will be the last question for this conference, press conference. Let me give the floor now to Mr. Amdok, Dr. Amdok, to answer the last question and then to be completed by His Excellency Anthony Maropin.
Thank you very much. In terms of options, I think if you go to the report, in the interest of time, I just wanted to refer you to the panel report. It has very serious recommendations, which about 15 of them, grouped into like 4 areas. What is expected from African governments in terms of addressing capacity deficits and issues, because you know that this whole illicit finance moves through tax evasion, tax avoidance, trade mispricing, and all that. We would like to have our own institutions, revenue collection, tax administration, and all that, to have that capacity to be able to address this issue. But also, beyond that, we need to develop capacity in our legal institutions to address issues of litigation and all that, and be at the top level that they will be able to handle litigation against and essentially very efficient institutions on the other side in terms of lawyers, accountants, and all that. So there is a whole set of issues that were addressed to the national governments in Africa. We have to contribute to that. To our partners also, there is a number of issues. As we say, this illicit finance has a source and destination. At the destination level, we would like to see the secrecy jurisdiction disappear. We want to see transparency, accountability in financial transactions and all that. We need to address all the secrecy jurisdictions in the safe havens and the legal aspect of it and all that. On the multinationals, we would like to see them adopting a country-by-country reporting. You cannot have your headquarters somewhere in a safe haven where you don't pay any tax, and yet you report 90% of your revenue in that destination, and when you are working, 80 to 90% of your activities are somewhere in the world. If multinationals adopt country-by-country reporting, we will be able to see vividly how much are you making in this country and that country and all that. There are a number of other instruments that can be used to address this. Of course, we would like on the 4th segment to address it in terms of more studies, more research, more work, more instruments led by financial institutions like the Bretton Woods, IMF, World Bank, the UN system, and others working together. But the final leg is the recommendation that address to the campaign issues where it is civil society or research institutions to address the campaign of sensitization and making this issue firm in the agenda of the institutions, whether at national level, regional, or global level. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Dr. Amdok, Commissioner of Economic Affairs. Do you have a concluding remark on this issue of illicit financial control out of Africa?
Thank you, moderator. No, actually, your question, the answer to your question is it's precisely of the high-level panel now that is working through the consortium to find those means of curbing illicit financial flows from Africa. That's exactly the assignment. And when they are, maybe by January there will be some report of the work that has been done by the consortium. But I mean, if you look at those recommendations in this report, they have already been mentioned by Dr. Hamtok, but you know, things like legislative reform, because there are loopholes, it's very important. The agreements, when the firms, particularly in the extractive industry, when they come in, it is very important to make sure that the agreements are watertight, that we get proper legal advice to make sure that they are watertight, because that's where problems start. But even tax reforms, you know, the loopholes that may be there in tax reform, but also capacity to administer properly structured tax system. And the international accounting system may be needing another look and to update it. And the capacity in general, institutional as well as human resources capacity to deal with these problems. One can go on and on and on, but suffice it to say that, in fact, that is the assignment of the continuing work of the high-level panel, working through the consortium to devise templates and to develop modalities for curbing illicit financial flows from the continent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With this, we have come to the end of this press conference. We want to thank His Excellency Dr. Amdok. We also want to thank Commissioner of Economic Affairs for coming to address the journalists this afternoon. And we want to thank the live stream team for doing a marvelous job so that everybody is following us live, all the way from the headquarters in Kigali Convention Center. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for the opportunity.